Go to SEC Country to catch up with Andrew Astleford. You can join him and his coverage of SEC football right there at SEC Country. Let's move it out to the SEC Western Division. Andrew, of course, for so many years, as I mentioned, Alabama dominating the division, LSU and Auburn being in that second tier, and then just about everybody else. Ole Miss obviously had their run for certain reasons under Hugh Freeze for a couple years that we know much better in perspective why that took place. But Texas A&M, you can certainly rip apart Kevin Sumlin's tenure there for continuing to falter in November, losing 5 games year after year after year. But he certainly put the program on the national map with Johnny Manziel in particular. But really, his personality, his ability to recruit nationally and bring in top 5 to 10 classes. And then also now we're in a position where Texas A&M certainly can't keep that second tier or third tier status in the SEC Western Division. That's not why they brought in Jimbo Fisher. It's to gun for the top and Nick Saban.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, I think it'll be really interesting to see what happens with Jimbo Fisher. My personal opinion is that they gave him too much money, and he's not going to, work out in that way. They're expecting him to win national titles, and I think for a while, at least, the road is going to be very tough for Jimbo Fisher there because you have Alabama in the SEC West, you have LSU, you have Auburn, the team that won the division last year. I think Auburn will still be pretty good this year. So I think for a while, it's going to be a tough road for Texas A&M and Jimbo, but he has that 10-year contract. They pushed out Kevin Sumlin in College Station for one reason alone. They wanted Jimbo Fisher to come in and win a national championship and do it fairly quickly too. So, they have the resources at Texas A&M. This is a program that always was just kind of on the edge of being really, really good or one of the nation's best. They had a few breakout moments, of course, with Johnny Manziel and Mike Evans, beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa that season early on in the Aggies SEC career. But, this is a program that kind of was average and too average the last few years and definitely needs to pick it up. So we'll see. I think it's going to be a tough task for Jimbo Fisher to match up with Alabama, Auburn, LSU these upcoming years. But we'll see if he can do it. He's being paid a lot to try to make it happen for the Aggies.
Certainly, as soon as somebody puts that championship ring on their finger, they gain a certain status. Les Miles would not be Les Miles without the 2007 national championship. The same with Jimbo Fisher. But there just seems to be a difference between a Nick Saban, Urban Meyer, a guy that's proven that they can go into a program and then win a championship, go to another program, win a championship, and do it repeatedly. Jimbo Fisher is a fine coach. There's no question about that. But, of course, he had all the talent in play at Florida State. When he won the national championship, they had an extremely light touch of his schedule in the ACC, and he had what may turn out to be a first-rate, first-tier NFL quarterback in Jameis Winston. So taking nothing away from that effort, when you play Duke in an ACC championship game, you're not necessarily playing the best competition. He played like a 1 or 2 game season, and he hasn't done it again like the guys that I mentioned beforehand. So we'll see if Jimbo Fisher is up to the task in challenging Nick Saban, keeping all that Texas talent at home, and he's going to have to wrestle, of course, Tom Herman and others to do just that. And one of those,
it's going to be tough.
Yeah, definitely. And Andrew, of course, one of those schools in play when you talk about Texas talent is LSU, because they've got plenty of their own right at home, but they go to Texas. They're close to the Houston area. That I heard just an amazing stat about Houston high school football talent. It kind of rivals Atlanta in terms of a metroplex. Just some crazy statistics about how many 4 and 5 stars play there in the Houston metro area, and many go to LSU. LSU lines up as much talent as anybody in the country, but that one position, Andrew, seems to continue to be an issue, whether they don't recruit the right guys or they can't develop the guys they recruit. I will let you try to sort out the LSU quarterback situation, but they certainly have 2 guys that they hope are the savior.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting because you're right. I'd be being paid a lot more money than I am right now if I knew the answer to that question of why LSU can't recruit a quarterback. But, it boggles the mind because is in such a rich recruiting area that we see the stats every year. There's so many players from Louisiana, Eastern Texas, that area of the country that go on to NFL careers. And of course, LSU is right in the middle of that. And they draw a lot of future NFL talent at LSU. And we see guys like Patrick Peterson and Honey Badger come through and have great NFL careers, Leonard Fournette, and they just haven't broken through and won an SEC title recently. So, it's just one of those things where, they need to figure out the quarterback position. I think Miles Brennan's going to be the guy at LSU. I think things are kind of leaning in that direction right now. It can change, of course, through spring ball, but this is a guy who became highly touted. He's a Louisiana guy. He was committed early on to the Tigers, wavered a little bit when things were a little shaky there with the program, but ended up going to Baton Rouge. And I think he'll be the guy that LSU's been wanting for all these years. They won't have the inconsistent play anymore in the pocket. And once that happens, I think LSU can be a contender in the SEC West because, this is a program that has all the other pieces. You have athletic players at wide receiver, you have running backs, you have defensive players each year at LSU who are among the conference's best. So, it's going to be a lot of pressure on Ed Orgeron eventually to make use of all the resources at his disposal because he has one of the nation's best defensive coordinators, if not the best, and Dave Aranda, who's just got a healthy bump in pay because Texas A&M really wanted him to come along with Jimbo Fisher. So, Dave Aranda is still there. They had some trouble with the offensive coordinator situation last year. Matt Canada's out. Ensminger's in, so we'll see if that all works out. And I think that's still a question for the Tigers. But, if they can figure out the quarterback position, this will be a team, again, that will be one of the SEC West best.
If I'm a top flight recruit and I hail from the state of Louisiana at any positional unit, I definitely think about staying home at LSU, especially if I'm playing like cornerback or one of the famed LSU positions. But this Terrace Marshall, arguably the best wide receiver coming out in high school football, stayed home. And if anybody's dependent on another player on the football field, it's the wide receiver, because if he doesn't have a quarterback, then he's not going to go up. And man, I would just maybe not necessarily trust what I've seen out of LSU football in the passing game to be able to make that decision if I'm one of the very best. And we both know what these guys are thinking coming out of high school when they're this good. They're already thinking NFL.
Yeah, of course. Oh, definitely.
One of the best with Terrace Marshall. We got Andrew Asselford on the line from SEC Country. Before we let you go, Andrew, let us know what you've been working on.
Yeah, well, you mentioned earlier, I kind of talked to Lane Kiffin for a few things today. I have two stories up, one about Dave Aranda, actually, where Lane said he was the toughest defensive coordinator he faced in the SEC, so that was pretty interesting. And then an earlier one where I asked Lane, how would you handle the quarterback situation at Alabama this spring between Tua and Jalen? He gave a pretty thoughtful answer there. I'll let you go check it out to see his answer. But yeah, I'll have some more stories coming out in the next few days on that. And I handle just SEC-wide topics throughout the week as well. And on our website, it's always football season. So if you're in the need for some football right now during the peak of March Madness, check us out for sure.
You're a man after my own heart. That's what we do right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. It's college football all the time. So Andrew reached out to him on Twitter, and he was courteous enough to come on and share his football knowledge. So we talk a ton of SEC. Andrew, you're welcome back anytime.
Oh, I enjoyed it a lot and love to come back. Take care of yourself.